Hello and welcome back to the Gluten Free RN. I'm Nadine, the Gluten Free RN. Today during episode 36, we're going to talk about traveling while you're on a gluten-free and or paleo diet. Trust me, nobody wants to live in a bubble, least of all me. So we're going to talk a lot about traveling today. Hi, I'm Nadine Griskowiak. This is episode 36 of the Gluten Free RN podcast. Today we're going to talk about traveling while you're gluten-free or on a paleo diet. Whether you're celiac or you have non-celiac gluten sensitivity, or even other food intolerances, including dairy or soy, there's many other different intolerances that people actually have to live with. Many of them go hand in hand. But I'm a nurse and I like to travel. Not only do I like to travel for business, so I go on book tours for my book, which is Donation, a nurse's memoir of celiac disease from missed diagnosis to food and health activism. So I give talks all over the world about celiac disease and many different topics surrounding that. But I also travel for pleasure, and if I can, I connect the two. So if I can make a business trip a pleasure trip or get a few days in that are relaxing while I am on a business trip, I certainly will do that. As I mentioned, I don't want to live in a bubble. That was never my intention. Living in a bubble leads to isolation, and it's not a healthy way to live at all for anyone, whether they have food intolerances or not. And over the years, I have helped many people discover that they can safely travel all over the world while they have to be on a gluten-free or a paleo diet or whatever their food issues are. So I've helped people go to Nepal, South America, even road trips in the United States can be tricky sometimes, but certainly not impossible. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And I'm getting ready for a trip to India for the International Celiac Disease Symposium coming up in September, followed by a nice trip to Thailand to visit friends. So while I'm a little apprehensive about traveling and eating, by no stretch of the imagination is it going to prevent me from traveling. And please follow me on Instagram or Facebook. I am everywhere as the Gluten Free RN. I'm pretty easy to find. So when we do travel, I like to post pictures of where we are and the food that we're eating and various tips so that you understand that you can travel too. And it's not hard. Planning ahead or preparation comes in handy and it makes life a lot easier. Pete and I just took a road trip from Oregon all the way to Boston. So we did travel all across the United States. We went through Montana and North Dakota, Illinois, Indiana, and we stopped in various places such as Buffalo, Missoula, Fargo, New Hampshire, Boston, Nantucket, and then we flew home from Philadelphia. So we had a fabulous trip. And sometimes it was easy to eat, depending on where we were. If we stayed with friends that were also paleo, that was really easy. But because we were driving, we also packed a cooler full of food, and we kept that replenished with things like Applegate deli meat and Kite Hill cheese, fresh fruits and vegetables, Mary's crackers, and of course, Jill's crackers, which are my favorite. And it was quite easy to make picnic lunches along the road or in the car. So we never even sort of felt hungry at any point, or starving certainly. I always have Epic bars, which are meat protein bars. My favorite are the bison. So a little bit of preparation goes a long way to alleviating any stress that you might feel. Now, having said that, several times we had to eat out. And that can be stressful, especially if you're unfamiliar with where you're eating or how the establishment actually prepares their food. As I've said before, we're extremely lucky in Portland, Oregon, in that we have at least 37 restaurants that are 100% designated gluten-free and are very accommodating to other food intolerances. But as you're traveling across the United States, many of you may have noted that not every town or city or even state understands what it means to be gluten-free. And so it can be difficult in various areas around the country in the United States. I'm hoping it's easier where you are in the world. I know people are listening all over the world, which makes me very happy. And I'm curious as to how easy it is to eat out in Tel Aviv or Switzerland, in Oslo, Norway, Victoria, Australia, Puerto Rico, Romania. Of course, of all those people that are listening in the United States and Canada, how easy is it for you to eat when you're traveling or even in your town? Unfortunately, I know that food deserts exist, and those are places where it's very difficult to get fresh fruits and vegetables or even food that's not processed. By processed, I mean highly processed. Most of it comes from the back of a semi-truck and it's delivered. People don't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables, let alone things like grass-fed beef with no antibiotics or hormones. So it can be tricky depending on where you live or where you travel. Again, a little bit of preparation goes a long way. Thankfully, most of us have smartphones or computers, and we can look up where there are local farmers markets, Whole Foods, natural grocers. Co-ops are my favorite. They tend to have the most variety for things like paleo products, very good selections for gluten-free products, and a lot of local products. Certainly organic, fresh fruits and vegetables, many of which are locally grown depending on where you are. Those are easy to find on many apps that will locate grocery stores or farmers markets for you. Restaurants can be found with apps such as Find Me Gluten Free or Yelp. Sometimes restaurants can be very tricky. Reviews can be helpful, especially if people that you trust are leaving reviews, but they can also be deceiving. Please be aware of that. Sometimes restaurants have very favorable reviews, but then when you walk into them, come to find out they actually make pizza there, or there's flour in the air, lots of sauces, and it's really difficult to eat in those places. For that reason, I recommend that people plan on not eating at places that actually make pizza, despite maybe having gluten-free pizza or salads and things, because that flour that they throw up in the air is in the air for up to 72 hours. And that flour then settles on everything in that restaurant. So the risk of cross-contamination is enormous. And of course, you and I both know that it's really important to avoid that cross-contamination. We also recently went to a wedding that was held in a facility that had several restaurants. So we thought, well, we'll go get dinner before we go down to the wedding. And we went to the restaurant and quizzed the staff person, the waiter, and said, hey, your menu actually says that you have gluten-free food here, that it's celiac friendly. Do you have a designated fryer for the French fries? And he said, oh, we don't. But just so you know, the oil does get heated up to a temperature over 250 degrees. At which point I said, thank you very much. I really appreciate that information. And as soon as he walked away, I looked at Pete and we talked about it a little bit. And I've said for years that people need to be aware that the gluten protein is extremely heat stable and is very difficult to denature even at high temperatures, even over temperatures of at least 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. So it is extremely heat stable and a very difficult protein to denature. So just because people think that heat will change the protein or make it go away or cook it away, that's not the case. So please do be aware of that. And that's applicable to woks and fryers or grills. So the heat does not destroy that protein. Please be aware of that. At which point I was prepared not to eat. Again, that's fine. At this point in my journey of being gluten-free and now paleo, my body certainly can go for a very long period of time without actually eating something. And that's fine. I've fasted, I've done intermittent fasting, and it's not that hard for me to go without nutrients because my gas tank is full for nutrients. I'm not deficient in any of them, and I'm at the upper level of the normal limits for everything, including vitamin D, B6, B12, magnesium, and because I maintain a very healthy diet, it's okay if I don't eat every meal. Trust me. And if you have to skip a meal because there's nothing safe for you to eat, it's much better for you to do that than to get contaminated and be sick for days or weeks or months. My recommendation is that you not risk contamination or cross-contamination, if at all possible. If you're new to this, plan ahead, talk to other people that travel safely, ask questions of other people that do travel safely, and ask questions of the waitstaff and the chef. Talk to the people that are in the restaurant, both serving food and preparing food. If you need to talk to the manager of any restaurant, I'm sure that can be arranged. If you're not comfortable, just be prepared, again, not to eat or eat, drink some water, be sociable. I would say, unless you feel tremendously uncomfortable, and then, just say, well, thank you very much, but I can't eat here. And so therefore I'm going to take my party and we're going to go somewhere that is safe. While we were in Boston, I had the honor of presenting at the Gluten Free Allergy Free Expo in Worcester, Massachusetts. So was traveling with several friends. One of them, Amy Fothergill, the author of the Warm Kitchen cookbook. She's a chef, and also Paxton Scott from Groundbreaker Brewery was traveling with us. We were very excited to all be there, all of us West Coasters on the East Coast. So we made plans to go out to dinner together. And we're all very seasoned travelers. We're really savvy at restaurants and trying to navigate what is safe and what is not, because trust me, none of us really want to get sick. The interesting thing was that we all agreed that we would pick a restaurant that was highly rated, had really good reviews on Yelp. So we all went there. Amy brought along her NEMA, which is a sensor that tests for gluten in food. And before she allowed her daughter to eat the food at the restaurant, even the appetizer, she tested it. Now, the rest of us were talking and we were pretty happy to be there. And we thought, well, the place had been vetted. But Amy made her daughter wait until the test came back. And lo and behold, the test came back positive for gluten. So at that point, we had already put in our orders for our dinner, but we asked to talk to the manager. Actually, we notified the waitstaff. The waitstaff notified the chef. The chef notified the manager. And pretty soon we had a nice little circle around our table, because this particular restaurant really wanted to somewhat cater to the gluten-free community. So we talked about the positive test, and then we all agreed that we would test the rest of the dinners. I actually had my NEMA too, so I pulled it out and started to test our dinners before anybody ate anything. Lo and behold, the next 4 tests were also positive. 2 of them actually said high gluten. The manager, of course, was interested. We had a great conversation. The chef was also interested. Come to find out, in this particular restaurant in the back where we couldn't see, they do make pizza. And there was certainly other risks of cross-contamination. So we talked to them. Amy followed up with a nice email. But we didn't eat dinner there. We all went back to our hotel room. We stopped at the grocery store. And because we had pre-planned, we actually had hotel rooms that did, in fact, have kitchens. So we used those kitchens and whipped up a really good dinner for all of us. And there was a dishwasher there, so it made it really easy. And we had our cooler full of food and fresh fruits and vegetables. Really quick, really easy, no stress dinner. And then we washed up all the pans and packed up the ones that we had brought. But if we didn't have that NEMA, or what I usually use is the Easy Gluten test strips to test for gluten in food, there's a risk that we really would have trusted what was on Yelp and Find Me Gluten Free, that the reviews were accurate. And maybe people didn't get sick, but maybe the people that did get sick actually didn't write the reviews. So we had some tools to use, and I highly recommend, if you're interested in doing little science experiments at the table, that you get a NEMA or some Easy Gluten test strips. They're really quick, easy, nice little science experiments. Kids love them. And then you have peace of mind that the food that you're going to consume is not going to make you sick, especially when you're traveling. It's very important. So when I do travel to India and to Thailand, I am going to take the Easy Gluten test strips and also the NEMA. I want to do a comparison study loosely of the food that is available to me while I'm traveling and to also stay safe. A little bit of gluten, if I get hit with a little bit of a cross-contamination, it tends not to hit me too bad, but 2 or 3 or 4 hits of even a little bit of gluten will certainly take its toll on me. And I have no desire to be sick or in the bathroom all the time or have achy joints and muscles or however it's going to play out that time while I'm traveling. And you don't either. We just don't have any time for that nonsense. So know where your grocery stores are. Take a few tools with you, even if it's a nice little kit of utensils of a fork and a knife and a spoon if you can. They make really good bamboo ones that are easy to travel with and very light. I have them in my camping gear. I have them in my travel gear. And so those are really handy to have along too. If you're looking for more information, please visit the glutenfreeglobetrotter.com website. You can follow Erin on Instagram and Facebook. She's a wealth of information, as is glutenfreepassport.com. Kim is also an enormous wealth of information as far as traveling, not only in the United States, but all over the world. She actually has allergy cards that are available and notifications that you can hand to wait staff and the chef and the managers so that they understand in the language that they speak what your food issues are. So it's very handy to have those tools available to you and also gather information so that it's easier for you to travel. When I travel, I also take activated charcoal if I think I get hit with gluten or I know I get hit with gluten, and then I flush my body with a lot of water as quickly as possible. It doesn't always alleviate all of the symptoms, but it gives me a little bit of peace of mind that I'm flushing all of that, whatever I ate, through relatively quickly. I'm not a big fan of any of the gluten busters or gluten ease or any of those medications or those over-the-counter enzymes that supposedly break down gluten. Even if they did break it down, those fractionated proteins are still going to cause you damage. So ideally, we're not going to get any gluten. And even if we do, sometimes we just have to get through that hit of gluten. But my recommendation would be to travel with some activated charcoal and flush with a lot of water. There's other things many people do sometimes to alleviate the symptoms. Sometimes even without any assistance, your body will recognize that protein and you'll either end up with vomiting or sometimes diarrhea. It's your body's effort to get rid of that offending protein. I've mentioned before that we're extremely spoiled in the Pacific Northwest and Oregon in that we have almost 40 restaurants that are designated gluten-free. I'm going to include the list of those restaurants in case you ever travel to Portland and you'd like to know which restaurants are 100% gluten-free. There's other restaurants on there that are accommodating to gluten-free, but I would recommend that you stick with the ones that are 100% gluten-free unless you know how careful they are in their practices of preparing food safely for the people that have to be gluten-free, dairy-free, or paleo. So while Pete and I were traveling, we ended up in some high-end restaurants, and you would think in a high-end restaurant that they would be extremely accommodating, and sometimes they are. I think it just depends on the chef or who's in the kitchen at the time. But we did spend a lot of money for breakfast at quite a high-end restaurant, and it was basically 2 eggs, hash browns, and bacon, of course. But they could have done a little bit of a better job with the hash browns. They were basically your standard frozen hash browns, and they were fried way too crispy, and they were kind of had that freezer burn taste to them. So Pete ended up calling them punishment hash browns, which of course it's always good to have a good sense of humor whenever you are having any of these issues, whether you're at home or out or with friends. A little laughter goes a long way. So we want to have fun. We want to travel and have fun. So it is a good idea to travel with your sense of humor as much as possible. My other recommendation would be don't go to a fast food or restaurant chain expecting not to get gluten. Unfortunately, many restaurants are jumping on the gluten-free friendly or gluten-free savvy bandwagon because the corporations actually want to accommodate us. They want a piece of that pie. Hopefully it's gluten-free pie, but they do want a piece of that money. They want people to come to their restaurant. Now, keep in mind that when I go out, I have to take whoever is in my party of however many people with me. And I'm going to choose a restaurant that's at least 100% gluten-free or very safe that I've had great experiences at before. So those corporations want people to feel like they can go there. And that may be okay for people that are not celiac or that are sort of playing around with the gluten-free diet. They're not sure yet. I do recommend that people not play around with a gluten-free diet. You either are 100% gluten-free or you're working towards being 100% gluten-free. It really is not anything you want to mess around with. Food is medicine and we treat it as such. So don't go to a fast food restaurant that says they can do a lettuce wrapped anything or a restaurant chain and really expect them to be able to provide you with gluten-free food. And I do mean safe gluten-free food. They may be able to provide you with food, but the risk of cross-contamination, trust me, is not worth it. So stick with places that are reputable, that truly understand what gluten-free is, and they're not just trying to use it as a marketing tool. I know way too many people that are highly educated on what gluten-free is, and they go to fast food restaurants because they're traveling or something. They think that they're going to be able to get gluten-free food, and unfortunately, the vast majority of them end up sick, and it's sad every time. So I don't like to see that. I would much rather have people be as safe as possible and not sick. Of course, I'm a nurse. And speaking of traveling and traveling safely, I am going to lead a fabulous group on a river cruise on the Danube in July of 2018. The cruise goes from Budapest to Prague, and I've done it before in 2013 with a group of people that were gluten-free. And now we're taking a group that is gluten-free and paleo, and you don't even have to be gluten-free or paleo, but my job as the nurse and the leader of this group is to make sure that everybody has a fabulous time and they get gluten-free food or paleo food on the cruise itself, where all the meals are served. So I work with the chef and the staff. We have our own dining room, and it really is incredible. So I highly recommend, if you've ever wanted to do a river cruise, especially on the Danube, that you consider coming along with us because we are going to have so much fun. And if you know anybody that wants to come along with us and you can't come this time, please pass on the information. I've included the little brochure in the podcasting notes. So if you're interested, you can print that off. And please call Linda McHenry, the person that is actually the travel agent. I'll be the leader of the group, but she's the travel agent that actually plans out all of your travel plans and itinerary. So again, this is going to be a great cruise, and I'm just plugging it a little bit because I know there's people out there that feel they can't travel, but this is a great way to do it. So not only am I the Gluten Free RN, and I will be talking about how to be gluten-free and answering questions, but my background is also emergency trauma and critical care. How handy is that? So if you want to feel extra safe, please come along and join our group because we will have a great time and we will eat some amazing, safe, gluten-free and paleo food. Basically whole food, meat, fish, and eggs, nuts and seeds, fruits and vegetables. The chefs on Amaway Cruise Line are amazing, and they have really proven to be quite responsible and attentive. So there you have it, traveling gluten-free and paleo. It's not hard. Don't live in a bubble. Get out there, have some adventures, Take baby steps. Every great adventure starts with one step forward. Find people that you can travel with that will be supportive, and maybe they need to be on a gluten-free diet too. There's safety in numbers, especially when you're trying to eat out. If I don't think of a question, Pete thinks of the questions to ask, or whoever I'm out with will ask very pertinent questions of the waitstaff and the chef. So the more the merrier. I like a good party, and I have lots of friends. I'm so lucky, and I really do like to eat really good food, and if I can eat out safely, then I'm all for it. Use your resources and take those baby steps, but definitely get out there and travel. Thank you for joining me for episode 36 of the Gluten Free RN podcast. I'm Nadine Gruskowiak, RN, BSN, CEN, wishing you happy travels and lots of adventures in life. Stay safe and be healthy. Thank you for joining me, and until next episode, have fun. Bye-bye.